Good afternoon. Welcome to the Big Show. The Big Show brought to you every day by FanDuel Casino. We come to you right about 5 o'clock. We like to break down everything that is going on in the world of sports, especially with respect to the NFL and the Steelers. And, of course, the big news today, I think, is very, very much the fact that it seems like they have figured out who the 7 coaches are that they're interviewing, the 7 coaches that they're going to talk to, and then the ones they are going to bring back. I will say this. I know there's a lot of people that have talked about the Steelers and the profile of the coach that they need to hire. I would tell you this. The Steelers probably need to hire a coach who is got some ability to work with and develop players, especially on offense. But I think that you can get a little too caught up in all that kind of stuff, just looking at the current roster as if the roster couldn't turn over real quickly in 2 years anyway. Now, I think there are a couple of guys that have gotten interviews that I just don't know that they're real, actual candidates. When I look at, for instance, Mike McCarthy, I feel like he probably isn't a guy that is a real candidate, but they're going to talk to him. Jeff Hafley obviously just got hired by Miami, so take him out of the list. Clay Kubiak and Chris Shula and Anthony Weaver have interviewed a bunch of different places, so who knows what's going to happen. But one thing I think that I do get a distinct impression that this is not a hurry process. This is not a process in which they're going to hurry up and try and hire someone quickly. And even if that means they lose 1 or 2 of these guys, that could happen. They could lose a couple of these guys, that go and take a job elsewhere. But I feel like there's a lot of people that have the idea that somehow they're going to just hurry up and try and hire somebody real quick. I don't think that's the case. I don't. I think that it's one of those things where it feels a lot like they are really going to really do everything in their power to be thoughtful, thorough, and go out and make sure that whoever they hire, they bring in is the guy that they feel like gives them the best chance to win, not just this year, but down the road. I think that's the key to me with all this stuff. It's one of those things where I feel like it is going to probably take a few more days. And the Steelers might even wait until after the Rams are eliminated, because obviously 2 of their guys are tied up in the playoffs with the Rams. One thing that's interesting, and I've heard a lot of people basically run this out here, and I could actually absolutely see something like this happening, is you've got this guy, Nate Scheelhaase. He's 35 years old, right? If you look at what he's done and look at where he's been, he's the pass game coordinator of the Rams. Prior to that, he was an offensive assistant. Now, he was an offensive coordinator at Iowa State. And then a run game coordinator and then wide receivers and running backs at Iowa State. He doesn't have a ton of experience. And I think one of the things about him, he's probably going to be somebody that a guy like Chris Shula would be able to bring with him. If you look at Chris Shula, he's obviously a very hot candidate. He's a defensive coordinator. I know there's a lot of people that don't, necessarily want a defensive coordinator. But the biggest thing with him is he's about 4 years older, which means he's got 4 more years of experience. He's had a lot more experience in the NFL than Scheelhaase. And he's the kind of guy that people think, well, I think he's ready to be a head coach. And so you hire him, and maybe he brings in Scheelhaase as his offensive coordinator, because that would be a promotion over the job that he has out with the Rams. I mean, that's a combination that a lot of people seem to really like. One, Brian Flores is somebody people are somewhat interested in. The only thing I'll say about Brian Flores he is a guy who probably is a much better X's and O's scheme guy than he is a guy who is at dealing with players. He's known as one of the best scheme guys out there, known as one of the best, game plan guys out there. He's known as that. And so to me, when I look at it, I just say basically, I don't think that necessarily really works. I don't. I think that he's somebody who, if he hired the right offensive coach, it could work. But again, I get concerned because where he's been at, he's had a hard time maybe what I would call communicating with his players. So I look at all these guys and I say, I think there is somebody in this group that will be the Steelers head coach. I think that they're doing their due diligence. I mean, you say that they're doing their due diligence for sure. Like they are basically going out there and saying, hey, we're going to interview everybody that we can interview. Go from there and figure it out. I don't know. I think that's the key to me. It really is the key to me. It's like one of those situations where they have to make sure that they get the right guy. Because if they get the right guy, they've shown they're going to stay with him forever. And they're going to give him an opportunity to be there forever. So that's where we're at. Now, I have to, laugh because there's all these internet places that have odds on coaching. And the guy who seems to be the front runner in Pittsburgh, according to the odds makers, is Brian Flores. Now, the thing about Brian Flores, what do we know about him? One, he is considered a really high-level, intelligent, forward-thinking scheme guy. His teams are organized. His defenses are organized. His defenses are schematically really sound. He's a guy that makes good adjustments. He's got good game planning. They're disciplined. I mean, he's a really good football coach. The question is he ready to be the head coach again? And can he do the things that he didn't do in Miami when he was a head coach? And mostly that comes down to, is he somebody who can basically get along with players, especially his best players? Is he somebody that can communicate well with players? A lot of questions that need to be answered about that. The other part of it is, who would be his offensive coordinator? Because it's basically that they are in a place where if they hire Brian Flores, they better find a guy who really is a good X's and O's guy on offense. Flores obviously will be able to build a defense pretty quickly. But to me, I think that's the biggest thing that you have to do for everything that's involved. It's the biggest thing you have to do. So I don't think for one second that it's a done deal or anything like that. But I don't know that Brian Flores is a guy that really all excites me just from the standpoint of, I think he's a good football coach. Just don't know if he can be a head football coach. Period. I just don't know if he can be a head football coach. And that's where we're at right now, really. I mean, it's just going to be really important to note for the Steelers that if they hire Brian Flores, they're going to have to hire a good offensive guy, but they're also going to have to make sure they have a good staff of guys that are good buffers, because it sounds like Brian Flores is really hard on his players and his coaches. And, that can work if you have the right group of coaches in between you and the players. That's where I would tell you. Now, one of the rumors that's circulating that someone actually asked about is the fact that there's these rumors out there that the Steelers are cheap, that they don't pay and won't pay. That one of the problems they have is they just won't pay and don't have money and all of that other stuff. That's a problem. But I don't believe it. And I know there's some people that want to say it, but I don't believe it. And the reason I don't believe it is because I know the Steelers aren't the most I think they're a frugal organization in so many ways. I just do. And I feel that's what we're talking about. It's just now an important part of the discussion. It's come into play. They don't pay their coaches. I know that I buy any of that, to be honest, because I think that everything I've seen from the Steelers suggests that they want to do things the right way and they want to win. So I don't know if I believe that. I'm not sure if it's true, but I don't know that I believe it. As for other coaching candidates, we've heard people talk about Sean McDermott. I just don't think that's the Steelers style, to be honest. I think the Steelers have made it pretty clear they like to go out and find their own coach. They like to find a guy that grows into becoming their head coach. That's what they like to do. And they like to make sure that they can go and groom somebody to be there for a long, long time. Not that McDermott's old, but, obviously he's a guy that's coached for a while. And, he might be somebody who after 5, 6, 8 years is burned out and ready to retire or move forward. I think that's the key. McDermott, I think, he's a good coach. I think his team suffered from some things that were troubling all the time. But I just feel like, to me, there are other guys out there that are probably better fit what it is that they're looking for. That's the biggest thing. That's where I would say is the biggest thing. They have to really get to a point now where they are going to basically make sure that the guy they hire is surrounded with the right people. And that's the second part of this. It's not just hiring the coach, it's hiring who you're going to have around them. The support staff, the assistants, all of that stuff. It all has to fit and be right. And if it's not fit and it's not right, then it's going to be a problem. And really, in a lot of places, it's not that big of a problem because, like you saw with the Patriots, they hired a guy, he wasn't good enough, they fired him the next year. The Steelers aren't going to do that. Whoever they have, they're going to be stuck with because that's the way they do things. So the Steelers really are in a place right now where they have some time to get it right. They do. They have some time to get it right. And, it's important that they get it right. People have said, what about Omar Khan? What's his deal? Why isn't everybody on him? Why isn't he on the hot seat? I don't know that he's not on the hot seat, to be honest. I don't. I think for sure, to me, I think he's a guy who probably is is a little bit on the hot seat because, when you fire a coach or when a coach leaves, the next step is the general manager. But again, he's one of the Steelers guys. It's the way they do things. And he's somebody who I think, because he's one of the Steeler guys, is going to have a really, really long leash. The other guy, the other two guys, Anthony Weaver, Jesse Minter. I know people seem to be enamored with Anthony Weaver. He was a pretty good defensive coordinator. He's 45 years old. He was with the Dolphins. He's got basically, he's one of the guys that is probably going to get an in-person interview. His defenses are pretty good. He's known as a pretty smart individual. He's aggressive. He's somebody that honestly, in some ways, fits the profile, except he's probably, I would say, about 7 or 8 years too old. But he is going to get an interview, as is Flores, and I think McCarthy did. So, you have a lot of guys coming through. Period. And you're going to have, by the end of this week, probably a really good understanding of who the finalists are. And that's what I would tell you. That's where we're at. Who are the finalists? Period. And I think that's the key to me. Every day, trying to make sure that you have, the ability to narrow the field down and figure it out. When you fire or move on from a coach, it's not easy. It's never easy. It really isn't. But it can be easy if you are able to make sure that you go ahead and hire the right people. And so that's what they're trying to do. Overall, a couple things I would like to say about some other things. The playoffs this weekend, I thought the games were good, but I tell you, it is amazing when you watch the games how much these coaches really choke on these games so often. That's the thing to me. They just choke on these games. And they try to do things that they don't need to try and do. I thought, for instance, at the end of the half, the Texans and the Patriots, both teams could not have handled that worse. Now, you got three good games. Denver obviously beat Buffalo. New England beat Houston, and that was a reasonably good game, except for C.J. Stroud was bad. And the Rams beat the Bears. What you found out with the 49ers, there's an example of a team that just ran out of players. They just keep getting hurt. They keep getting guys hurt to the point where they didn't just have anybody. They had no ability to really to move the football. Seattle just completely ate them up. And, that was the only bad game of the weekend. So this weekend you've got the Rams against Seattle, and I think that game should be pretty tight. And you have Denver against New England. There's one caveat. It's in Denver. If it was in New England, I'd say it was going to be a blowout, but it's in Denver. So even though Denver's without Bo Nix, I don't know, man. I think they have a chance. But wouldn't it be amazing if the Patriots were able to win this thing? It would be amazing to me if they got to the Super Bowl. Because one of the things that we have always talked about is, would you rather have a situation where, you are never having a losing season? Or would you not mind a losing season if it meant it brought Drake May? I mean, the Patriots have gotten a chance because they have a quarterback, period. They have a chance because they have a quarterback. And they got him because they stunk for a year or two. So even though, they didn't go to the playoffs every year and all the other stuff like the Steelers and never had a losing season, the last 5 or 6 years, both teams, neither of them have won a playoff game, so who cares? The difference is the Patriots are poised now and set up for probably the next 8 to 10 years because of their quarterback. And so if they beat Denver, they get to the Super Bowl. You look at the teams that have gotten to the Super Bowl, and, it's basically most of them are teams that have that franchise quarterback. I don't know. I think it's so important, and I think the only way you can get it is by going out and getting it, period. And, Mike Tomlin's desire to bounce around and the Rooney's desire to bounce around 500, God bless him, but it's held them back. And that's where we're at with that. It's really held them back in many ways. Next thing up, last night there was the national championship game. And the national championship game was interesting because Indiana beat Miami. And, I think 20 years ago, if Indiana beat Miami, it would be a huge story. It would have been, this is incredible. And I think that one of the things that people need to do is stop bringing up history when we talk about college football. And it's sad, right? It's really sad. But the bottom line is college football now is so much different. It's just so much different that teams can get good quickly. They can get good in a hurry. They can go get guys in the transfer portal. They can play with older players. But more importantly, they don't have to worry about necessarily, for instance, going out and trying to recruit against Alabama and LSU and all these teams in the high school portal. They have to go out and recruit portal players. And so the kid that was a 2 or 3 star when he was 17, 18, is now 23. He's going to be a better football player than Alabama's 5-star kid that they just brought in that's only 18 years old. It's just one of those things where I look at it and I get tired of this narrative that Indiana is like some, that Indiana is this incredible story, and that it's amazing what they've done. Yeah, it's amazing, but it's not. When you were recruiting against history, it would have been amazing. But Indiana put a lot of money into their collective. Indiana basically said, we're going to be good at football. They went and hired the right coach, right? It's just one of those things where they were able to do it because if you have money, you have a good coach, right? You have a good coach, you put money into it, you can go out and win in the transfer portal, period. But really, at the end of the day, it's that's just not necessarily what they used to do in the past. So people are saying, well, why could Indiana do it? Well, because it's a different time and place. It's just like now we'll probably see more instances of the San Diego States of the world getting to the Final Four. Do you want to know why? Same thing we're talking about. Nowadays, San Diego State can't recruit against Duke and Kentucky and all these other teams, right? But what they can do is go out and get 24, 25-year-olds and give themselves a chance. And I think that is, to me, why it's completely different than it was. I mean, for real, if you think about it. 20, 25 years ago, if Indiana beat Miami, it would have been the greatest upset ever. The greatest story ever told. Because it was a different time or place. But what's happened in college athletics is history no longer really matters all that much. It just doesn't. And because it doesn't, it's hard to compare what Indiana did to what some other teams have done over the course of time. It just really is. At any rate, we are moving forward here. We're trying to get everything done that we can get done. We will do it again tomorrow. Enjoy your day.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.